Hello and welcome to another episode of The Real Deal with me, Josh, and as always, my friend, my compatriot, the one guy who I know at the end of the day is really going to get me, if you know what I mean. It's Charles.
Here I am. And, I love that every time there's always something that you say about me. I tried that once to say things about you, but I don't think it went very well. So I appreciate that you're always saying things about me.
Well, you know that text I sent you where I said, stop talking about me, and with a winky face?
Yeah, I mean, you just said that I know I get you. I'm still trying to get emoji, so I really didn't get that.
No, right. See, that was a threatening tone. I was trying to be threatening, like, don't talk
How
about me.
how is the winky
'Cause I don't...
emoji? That's the least threatening of emoji, right?
The winky emoji looks a little bit like he's got something on you that you don't
Well,
know he's got on you.
let me look
And
at
that's
it
not a
real
great
quick.
feeling.
Yeah, you know what?
Everyone pull up their winky emoji.
Oh,
There's
dude,
like a malicious
that's
smugness.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It's like the little blushy face, small smile, but with a little wink, with the eye open and eye closed. Yeah, dude, I should have got that. I get you too, and I didn't get that. I mean, I'm really fond of the like dot-eyed wide grin guy. You know the one I'm talking about?
Oh, of course.
Like
That's a classic.
like rectangle mouth. I really like that one because it looks just like me when I laugh and smile. So I always try to pop that one in there.
Yeah, I would say there was a time where you were maybe putting the smiley guy in, like maybe too much.
Yeah, I've cut back a little bit. I had this question for you that you didn't even respond to, and maybe it was just so, you know, cutting edge. But I was really honestly wondering, is it racist of me to use the black thumbs up? They offer now multiple skin tones. Am I allowed to use any of those, or should I just stick to the yellow?
Well, I think the premise is that people who've heretofore felt excluded from emojis now have a whole new world of emojis to explore to be represented accurately in this technological age we live in. And by the same token, it's they're emojis. It's a palette that we as social media painters, if you'll allow me to continue the metaphor, get to explore. And, I don't feel comfortable using other races' emojis because that's just the kind of guy I am. I've for many years complained that there's no self-hating Jew emoji, like an emoji that looks kind of like a normal white person, but secretly it's a white person who grew up Jewish and has mixed feelings about it. And there's none of those.
I think there is one. I'll show it to you later. It sort of looks.
Charles just texted me the little sack of money emoji, and that's not funny.
No,
Charles,
no. It's not the sack of. No, it's the little red-faced guy with horns. I think there's one of those.
Charles, I get enough of that during the workday, and now it's seeping into my private life, and I'm a little taken aback, buddy.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's the robe. Yeah.
But this week on the show, Charles and I were like, you know what's great? People being in rooms.
Dude, you love that shit. If New York, where you live, I know everyone knows that, and they don't know where I live. If they had a movie theater that explicitly showed movies where people were stuck in rooms / buildings, you would only go to that movie theater. And in fact, that sounds like an awesome movie theater. I would totally start that theater.
I would love to program minimum an evening. We'll continue this on to like an entire, year-long endless cycle of films that take place in as few settings as possible. Because this week on the show, guys, we saw 2 movies about people who just can't seem to get out of the room they're in. And even when they do, it's like, oh boy, do you really want to? Because the other side, not so great either. Charles, what did we watch?
Well, I don't know what you watched, but I watched, and I hoped you watched too, Saw from year of 2004 and Green Room from this year. Was it this year or last year?
I believe it got widely distributed this year, so let's go with 2016. And let me say this. The last time I saw, and isn't that a funny thing to say? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay to laugh. I know it's a serious podcast.
Say it
Hey, the last
again.
time I saw,
Oh, it
hey,
goes better.
saw. Hey, what am I? Falling asleep because I'm
Oh,
cutting up
oh,
wood.
man,
I'm snoring
this is the best
because
episode yet.
This is
Oh,
very good. I'm texting some people right now.
oh,
One sec.
okay.
Mom, dear mom, this is going to be, I know you didn't listen last week, but this one maybe try to work in because it's really good. We're having a really good time. Winky face. Okay.
Wait. You just sent
Yes.
a winky face to your mom? Or was that to my mom?
Well, it's to your mom. Yeah.
Wow, that's brutal.
Yeah. Let me explain to listeners. It's not weird, but I do call Charles's mother my mom. And it's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it on the podcast. Just
Yeah,
know
another
that
time.
going forward. When I say mom, I'm probably referring to Charles's mother, unless I explicitly make it clear I'm talking about my own mother. And just, tuck that away for a rainy day. But when I last saw, there we are again. I saw it when it came out when I was in high school. And if I do the math correctly, you were just then in your early 30s. So we, from two generations, both experienced the cult hit sensation of a little film called Saw, and I want to play a game. Let's where we both talk about when we first saw
Oh, jeez.
Jigsaw. Mm.
I think I'm gonna lose this game because I don't think I can remember, and that's sad. But
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
shit. I really liked where you were going. I thought this game would have been fun, like the whole, like where were you on 9/11 sort of thing. But I know I did not see it in theaters, but I really can't recall where I saw.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's still
saw.
good. It's still
Yeah,
good.
it's good.
I want
Oh,
to play a game.
that was good
I
too,
want to.
man. Oh, um,
Uh.
I remember seeing it. I think I probably saw it in Boston. That's going to be my guess. I think
Mm,
I saw it in Boston
mm,
in like 2006.
yeah.
So not a great story. It's a shitty game. That's my game. What's your answer to
Well,
the
no.
game?
Paint us a picture of this place you call Boston. What's that like?
Oh man, it was great. I love
Yeah.
Boston. Yeah, you hate Boston, but I love
Oh,
Boston.
it's a terrible place full of terrible people. And if you're listening, just please don't sully our audience with your presence. But go on.
Yeah, I believe I watched it in maybe I did. Yeah, no, I think now that I think about it a little longer, I went to BU back in
Hmm.
2005, 2004,
Name drop
2005.
much?
Yeah, and they put all the transfer students because I'd already dropped out of college once, so they put all the transfers into the Hyatt Regency Hotel on the Charles River,
Mm.
and I watched it with. Actually, I talked about him before when this is where I watched Total Recall with the same dude in my hotel room overlooking the Charles at a stupid time at the nighttime. And
So you
you
guys are
know,
just like best fucking friends, huh? Just all these fond memories with this guy you went to school with.
yeah, lived in a hotel room with,
Hmm.
played tag in the halls with,
That
avoided
actually sounds
the
kind of fun.
yeah, dude, it was actually real fun. 6 floors of the Hyatt were all college students.
Now, when you watched Saw together, what do you remember your impressions or his impressions?
Yeah, actually, I think they were similar to my thoughts when I watched it this time. I think overall, it's a. We'll do a blanket statement first, and then get into it. But I think it's a damn good movie with some flaws that are, some days you can overlook it. Some days you're like, ah, shit, I can't really overlook it. But yeah, overall,
And
it's
just to back up that statement, Charles and I underwent a process of watching Saw on a variety of different emotional states. So um, we've really tried to explore how much of Saw's micro budget and resultant continuity issues one can ignore while ecstatic from Glee, while incredibly sad. A state of general malaise. Um, semi happy, sort of sad. That was a good viewing.
Yeah, my favorite viewing was immediately after losing my wallet, I think. That was
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, put me right in that zone to get locked into Saw. But yeah, that was my story. I hope it was good enough for you, because obviously it was fine before, but you really needed something. What's your
Hey,
story?
listeners, take it to the iTunes reviews. Tell us how Charles' story was. Give us some feedback. We take that stuff very seriously, and it sort of helps shape the show. So thanks in advance for that.
Yeah,
I think I saw it in the theater. I don't remember who I went with. I remember I loved it, and the ending was
popcorn.
amazing.
How was the popcorn?
Yeah, there. I'm pretty sure there was popcorn. Maybe I'm kind of gilding a turd and making a memory that's kind of blasé a little bit more interesting by adding popcorn to it. But reality is sort of a shared illusion we all embrace. So I think if we go into life thinking like that, why can't I improve my memory of seeing Saw by adding popcorn to it? There's no
Oh,
victims in this crime.
dude, have you seen Memento? Because
Oh my God.
that's like
Hey,
the plot of
wow.
Memento.
Yeah, what a movie, huh? He's got all those tattoos on him.
Like me.
Yeah. But unlike unlike your tattoos, his are very helpful because they say stuff like "Don't trust that guy," um,
Actually, that was
and
written on the back of the picture, the Polaroid picture.
whatever. Okay, just shut. We're not talking about. Okay,
I just want you to
Saw.
yell about Christopher Nolan on every episode now.
Let me say this. I at my job because I'm fully employed with benefits. Yes, we're doing a fundraiser, and I noticed on the donor list the name Christopher Nolan appeared. And just seeing the name Christopher Nolan, most assuredly on some schmuck who has nothing to do with the famous director, just that incensed me enough that I thought about it and remembered it.
All right, get back to the fucking popcorn, man. You had some
Oh yeah,
popcorn,
so I'm guessing
gilded
it was like
popcorn.
well salted. I'm trusting I did not have any butter on it. I've never been a buttered popcorn man. But no, Saw was kind of the iconic series of my high school years. I was 14 when the first one came out. I will always remember seeing the second one in the theaters with my brother the very next year. But having rewatched Saw, I rewatched it at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So when I finished it, I had that wonderful sensation from watching a good horror movie where I was freaked out but not scared because I'd so delighted in it. Like its machinations were so effective and charming that I wasn't like, you know, full Lynch or Possession style holed up in the corner of my room sweating. I was just sort of more like had that nice fun jumpiness about me, not like devastated, just savoring a good set of scares, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's effective in a lot of ways. I think horror movies. It's a genre that I think has always been both really good and really bad as long as it's been being made. I mean, I guess you could probably say that for any fucking genre, but like horror is one of those genres that just there's always somebody making exceptional work, and I don't know if I'd call Saw exceptional, but it certainly continued the line very nicely from 90s horror into where we are right now. I think horror is like it's constantly moving with whatever zeitgeist we're living in, and it's a really cool how horror, and I would also say like sci-fi, good examples of both of those genres like really capture what we're living in. And Saw was, I think, we talked a little bit about this with Hardware, like how it's hardware, especially back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, were a lot about technology and shit. And I think this sort of continued in that vein. I don't know. Did you get a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that there's a sense of broken, unjust systems. There's a sense of, constant pursuit, duplicity, living double lives. There's a lot of these themes of paranoia that I think pretty well capture 2004 as I remember it. Um, I wanted to say, though, I do think this movie proves itself to be exceptional simply because the last 5 minutes of Saw truly put it in league with the finest horror films ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. That the ending sequence is so good, the way that it just unfolds And you've been looking at these Saws the whole time. The movie's called Saw. We're expecting this the whole time, and it never comes. And finally, we get to that. It just goes crazy so quickly, and I think it works really well. I think my biggest complaints of the movie are honestly the acting is really. I think it's pretty shitty. It reminded me, like Cube, which is I think a pretty cool movie, but similar problems where it's not consistent in the performance level.
Well, interestingly enough, that's one of the Carrie Elways' performance is
Oh
like
Jesus.
hammer horror style hammy. Like it is a very I'm playing a role right now. I'm a doctor. Like it's very funny. It's hard to I love
Yeah.
it works. Look, we have to set up the movie a little bit. It was made for under $2 million. It was made in 18 days. It was intended to go direct to video. They had Danny Glover, their only notable actor outside of Carrie Elways, for 48 hours of filming. So this movie was put together so like on such a fucking string and a dream. Like to see how they mold almost no base resources into a shockingly compelling hour and a half long movie deserves a huge amount of credit. Like outside of its overwhelming financial success, um, knowing how little they had to work with, it is an ingenious film, and they managed to take very few locations, a lot of incredibly amusing, like the car chase sequence is very obviously two people in immobile cars in a room full of smoke with sound effects playing. And yet, it doesn't take you out of it's fine. Like everything that's dumb about it mostly works to its credit because when it grows to that inevitable, horrifying, truly bleak ending that most film, the mark of any good horror movie is can you land the ending? And most movies, horror or otherwise, don't. But it's particularly hard in horror because you raise all of these fears and you raise all of these, different aspects of terror, and you have to really put a cherry on it to get it to resonate with people. And this movie builds to a climax that is so unavoidable and yet still surprising that it deserves all the credit in the world. Where, we see these saws and, these two men chained to pipes in a derelict basement with a corpse on the floor. And it's this puzzle. And we're going back in time to figure out how they got there. And you keep wondering, okay, are they going to finally discover that last clue that's going to, like, undo this whole thing? And they're going to get out and unmask the villain. And you're sort of teased with that. And when it finally get to the point where you realize that, oh wow, like this is ending like this. That man's about to saw his fucking foot off. Like it is really gutting. And and we're about to get to the spoiler of spoilers, but when that corpse on the floor turns out to be the living, breathing mastermind behind the entire plot, and in the most masterful shot in the film, the corpse ascends behind Adam, the shitty photographer guy / the actor who's playing him is the screenwriter, which almost forgives his horrible acting, but can't really because he's truly terrible.
Oh, is that the screenwriter?
Yeah, that is the screenwriter who were James Wan's co-writer on the film. But yeah, when the shitty photographer is, sees the door slam shut on him as Jigsaw goes, "Game over." That is an apex in horror filmmaking.
I think it's good. I think it's certainly on its own, and all the stuff you've mentioned, it definitely is worthy of being considered, a pinnacle of what it was doing at the time. I think it doesn't have quite the, intelligence level that other similar horror movies at the time had, such as, like I really got into the French and Belgian stuff, like, like Martyrs and Frontiers, all those guys, High Tension. I do think there's a little more to those than this, but maybe not. I don't know. There's like did you see The Ordeal?
I have not seen The Ordeal, Charles.
Okay. That came out like I think a year or two before. I don't know. I'm just like there's certainly I'm not going to take the budget into it too much, just because that's not a limitation as far as I'm concerned. I think it really, budget really isn't a huge deal. Like Primer is one of the best movies ever made, and it was made for a few $1,000. But
Well, hold on. You're that's a little misleading because you're choosing an outlier to off-put something that I think really is an accomplishment that's worth noting.
no, no, no. I'm not saying budget should be really considered. I'm not gonna fault it for having a small budget. I'm gonna fault it
Oh, okay.
for just not doing enough with what it had. Just like I'd rather watch The Ordeal again than this, probably. I think it just that one's a little, but maybe you're right. Maybe sometimes you don't want to be completely overwhelmed by a horror movie, and this one's light enough to just sort of sit through and enjoy. I really think I'm just gonna come back to the acting. I think that's killing it for me. It's just like some of them are laughably bad, and especially when Danny Glover goes crazy, it just like I just sort of got taken out of it because he's not a very
Well,
good
I mean,
actor.
let me say this in defense of America as the greatest country in the world. That parallel explosion of high concept French horror movies kind of get lost in their own way because definitely Martyrs, a movie that is unforgettable and striking and very intense. It does spiral off into kind of a mishmash at the end that takes away from the bite of the whole film. It's almost like a victim of its own imagination. And the grimy, shitty, like the grossness of Saw, from every element of the production design to the stretched acting performances to the true desperation that emerges by the end. I think the cumulative effect of that, like its own shortcomings and its own shittiness, are actually really powerful tools of discovery within the movie. Like it's kind of like its own engine over the course of watching the film because it overcomes all of that for an ending that works. And I do feel like something like Martyrs loses something in the end because when it truly goes full pie in the sky, it sort of takes away from the relatability of that horror. And relatability might be a controversial subject between us on this podcast, but in horror, it is pretty essential that you feel frightened.
That's a
And
good point.
and by the end of
Yeah.
Martyrs, when there's this sort of like ethereal plot that is kind of left unspoken in an unsatisfying way, it takes away from the whole experience. But in Saw, it ends in the most like truly the most claustrophobic, upsetting, deeply personal, nightmarish way, and that makes it a more effective movie at the end of the day.
Well, I think that's where I backtracked a little bit because I realized I was speaking for myself, and I personally I have a very hard time getting scared with horror movies. It really doesn't happen too much, so I do prefer maybe more of a cerebral horror story, and I think that's why maybe this one just I never quite got more than like an escape the room thing. Have you done one of those where they lock you in a room and you have to figure out how to get out of it?
Like a puzzle room?
Yeah, you go in. There's like a little backstory, and you have to find clues and get out
Well,
in an hour.
I used to play those point and click games on Newgrounds.
Oh no, these are in real life.
No, I realized that. No, I have friends and relationships and creative projects to attend to, so I can't be locked in a room deliberately.
Okay. Well, anyway, it just felt like one of those, except with more blood than you'd find at the. Well, no, there was that one. Hey, sorry, that was my dog. Sorry, listeners. But yeah, no, I just there's just some sequences where we already talked about how, the scene where I don't know. There's a couple of great scenes. I think the one where the cops invade his space, and that was like really, I got really into that because it's moving along. But I can think of so many movies I'd rather watch again than Saw, and that's sort of where I fall a little bit down. Like Cube, I mentioned Cube earlier. Have you seen Cube?
I've seen Cube, and actually, this is sort of a total side note, but I just ran into the other night I played a concert with my music band, and someone who I grew up with who exposed me to Cube and High Tension was there. And I said, Deja, you got to come on the program, and we're going to talk about Cube with Charles, because I'll bet you Charles loves Cube. So let's put a flag on Cube, because I would love to do Cube on this very podcast.
Sweet. But yeah, no, just actually, let's. I remember a couple episodes ago, you sort of made fun of me because I said that John Goodman was a good actor. Do you remember that? And how you like?
I don't
Well,
think I'm sure I made fun of you,
yeah.
but I'm not. Unless my opinion has changed drastically in the last month, I think John Goodman's a bad actor.
No, no, no.
I just think that
Your whole point. I was saying the reason why 10 Cloverfield Lane was even remotely successful was because John Goodman was in it. And you're like, oh, well, of course you can't fault a movie for having a good actor in it. But I just think acting, we've gotten so used to acting being good that when you see bad acting, it just like reminds you of why you're watching a movie to be, for me anyway. I watched Indiana Jones again, and that's a movie where, again, it's like, this movie would fucking suck if Harrison Ford hadn't been in it. And I guess that was my point with 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like, the movie itself is not strong enough to hold itself together without this really powerful lead performance. And I think Saw's big downfall is that it doesn't have any powerful performances at all. In fact, it has some pretty shitty performances. So for me, it just gets knocked down, and I can't really take it too seriously, which is too bad because there's some really great stuff in it, and it's worth watching. It just, they could have found someone better. And the fact that the fucking screenplay was the main character, the screenwriter, what an asshole. He's like fucking Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth when they always have to, oh, here I come. I wrote this fucking thing. I might as well be in it, even though you can't act at all. Jesus.
Well, hold on. No one deserves being compared to Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth acting. That is a really low blow.
Yeah, he was better than them, but it's the same premise. Like, you created this fucking thing.
Let me stress the worst thing that's ever happened in cinema, and this includes snuff film, is Eli Roth's scene in Inglourious Bastards. That is a true low point in filmmaking that not even like Bicentennial Man, Jack, I guess any Robin Williams film, not even that can rival how awful Eli Roth is in fucking Inglourious Bastards. What an awful moment.
And yeah, speaking of Roth, I mean, I think Hostel, the fact that Saw came out before Hostel, like, it's true. I think Saw was very good at, like, it knew what it was trying to do. I just don't think it had the talent and the skill and maybe even the budget to accomplish it. But it was really early on in this, like, all this stuff, that those French horror stuff, that was all 2003 to 2010, and this was right at the beginning. So they did do that. And what about Quentin Tarantino's performance as an Australian man? Is that not worse than Eli Roth's performance as a big Jewish man?
Okay, so at least Quentin Tarantino in the incredibly bad Django Unchained had the common sense to blow himself up in the movie, which is, credit where credit is due. Like, he lived my dream of watching Quentin Tarantino die in front of me. But no, Eli Roth is immeasurably worse. But I want to dial things back for a minute, because one, we get it. You have dual citizenship with France, Charles. France is so fucking great. Move to France, okay? Two, Saw is a low-tech, gross, desperate movie made by people who were literally desperate for money and time to make this movie. And the sheer passion to make a convoluted, bizarre, and upsetting film against all those constraints on the power of a very clever script in the face of almost no support from anybody makes it the kind of scrappy, come from behind victory that I find it very easy to rally behind. And again, movies like this live and die on if they slam dunk the finale, and I would say few breathe the rarefied air of Saw. It is one of my favorite endings to a movie ever. It works every time. And you're right, I don't want to watch it every week. It's not that kind of movie. In fact, I'm kind of happy I took a 12-year break between having seen it once and twice.
Yeah.
Because it was great. I enjoyed watching it. I
I did
loved the
too.
ending. I went away being like, you know what, Saw, this is a delightful movie. It is truly a cult film for the 21st century and speaks to like a revitalization of horror that is not contingent on CGI or a large budget. And I think it's a heroic moment in recent American filmmaking.
Do you think, question for you, do you
Okay.
think we've been joking all all evening, afternoon, morning about Saw, but I did think while I was watching it, do you think that the title of this movie intentionally had that double entendre, if you will, where
No,
the
I think it's
movie,
called Saw because there's saws in the movie.
but the whole movie's about people just watching life and not living life. And there's a whole, there's the main character is a photographer who is a voyeur. You have all these shots of cameras, and you watch the movie through television sets, and you sort of seeing. I think I mean, maybe I'm stretching a little bit too far. Where I really wanted it to be about something more, but I think the themes of the movie could certainly relate to a culture in which we are obsessed with watching shit. I don't know, just throwing it out
Well,
there.
I like that. I think that's fertile ground for idle speculation, and listeners of the show certainly know that idle speculation is what we trade in here at The Real Deal, Josh and Charles. Yeah, there's also this sense of remove between people, like a lack of intimacy.
Yeah,
And, everyone, and I mentioned this earlier, but everyone's living a double life in this movie, with the possible exception of Carrie Elway's wife and daughter. Everyone is living a lie or has switched from one side of life to the other. And yeah, I think when these two men are forced into this kind of intimacy of a life and death situation, that is as much a part of the movie as anything else. So yeah, I feel that. Like, people are having their barriers between experience and, you know, observation deeply punctured and in some ways irreparably damaged in the movie. So yeah, I think you're not totally wrong, which, that's kind of a first.
wow, man, I appreciate that. That's really big
Hey,
of you
you're
to
welcome.
say. Yeah.
I'm a
Well,
big
that was.
man.
I think the daughter was maybe the best actor in the whole fucking movie, and she killed it. And one of her lines was when the pager went off. She's like, "I hate that thing." And I just that was like a moment of clarity for me, where I was like, "Oh, she hates the pager."
Mommy, will you get the madman out of my room?
Wait,
Mom,
are you? Is that from?
there's a bad there's a
Oh,
bad man in my room.
I get it. You're doing it. Okay. No, and the fact that the only two characters, as you said, who aren't living double lives, are the
Mom,
fucking were the only
there's
the
a
only
bad man
the
in my room.
she okay okay she no I don't the woman, was she the only woman?
Yes?
His wife, I loved it actually that she fucking took control. She escaped. She got her daughter out of there, and then the very next shot is of the Princess Bride guy saying, "My family needs me." I think it's so good. I think there are elements of the movie that are so fucking good, and the whole family relationship was killer.
No, it's so good. At the end, this womanizing liar tries to act out his one last fantasy of having any role in his family's life, and in doing so, unnecessarily cuts off his own foot.
Yeah, it's great. Like you see it, and what's his name from Lost is coming back, and you realize that all this is pointless, which I think makes the ending even better. Because some people might have tried to put tension and say, "Oh, is his wife okay?" while he's cutting off his foot. But no, we know right from when he first starts cutting his foot off that it's totally pointless, and it's a really good move, and just made the ending of this movie really fucking awesome. I loved it. I remember people complained about the ending as though it were like a cop out or shitty, like, oh, it's like a M Night thing. I think it's fucking great. Great movie,
No,
great
it is
ending.
bold and brave filmmaking to actually end on a note of total futility and hopelessness. And the last image in the film is a door slamming shut forever on a man chained to a wall in a room with a corpse in it. And that is it. That's the end of the movie. You don't walk out of that, you know, skipping. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you think Saw 2 is all about Carrie trying to get into his car and realized he can't drive with his little stub foot?
I have seen Saw 2, which stars the great Donnie Wahlberg, but it does not continue the story of Saw 1, though, according to Wikipedia, which is a popular uh, sort of crowdsourced base of knowledge and information that's become very popular in the last decade. Check it out, wikipedia.org. And Wikipedia, if you sponsor shows, I think we rely pretty heavily on you for research. So maybe throw us a couple bones and we'll mention the old wiki a little bit more. But I think they resolve questions about Carrie Elways' character in like Saw 7. So if you and I want to actually sit down and watch the next 6 movies, we might find out what happened to him. But I do not know as of the taping of this episode.
Yeah, I got my copy of this through a torrent, and it was only then that I realized that there were 7 of these movies. I thought there were like 4, which is still a lot.
Well, there's the 3D one. I remember that was the thing.
Yeah. So you've seen 1 and 2 and that's it?
I've seen 1 and 2. I think what happened was that kind of like Halloween, they wanted to have it be a somewhat loosely defined series that would just come out on Halloween. So I believe Saws 1, 2, and 3 and 7 have some kind of continuity as far as the Jigsaw character goes. I'm kind of talking at my asshole right now. And man, that'd be impressive.
Is there a segue? Did we get a segue out of that?
No, I've only seen the first 2. That's it. That's all I have. Everyone, go watch all the Saw films. Report back to us.
And speaking of, I can't even. Where are we going to get into Green Room?
Hey, remember at the end of Saw how they're in that room they were in at the beginning?
Oh yeah.
Well, guess what? In Green Room, that was pretty good, huh?
That was pretty
in Green
good.
Room, it's also about people in a room and they don't want to be in the room until they really want to be in the room. But then later they don't want to be in the room again and they leave the room, but then they go back to the room, at which point they eventually leave the room again in a definitive way.
We don't even need to talk about it anymore. Yeah, that was it.
That's pretty much the movie.
Yeah.
Green Room is kind of like Saw. It's a movie that really raises the torch for small exploitation-oriented thrillers that defy expectation, and I really enjoyed Green Room. Charles, did you like this punk rock-themed journey through violence, degradation, Nazi dogs, and people's hands getting hacked off that is Green Room?
I loved Green Room.
Okay, here we go. We're cooking.
Yeah. And you probably didn't see it because you never see anything except for what I tell you to see. You didn't see Blue Ruin, did you?
I downloaded it on my computer.
Okay, that's pretty close. This Jeremy Saulnier's color follow-up is he's gonna make his own color trilogy like that guy.
That Swedish motherfucker?
I don't know where he's from. The red, white, and blue guy.
Oh.
Who is that guy?
Edgar Wright?
No, I don't know where he's from. Some European
Tom
country.
Cruise?
Yeah,
I think it's Swedish.
Is it? I don't think so. Let me look it up. I'm going to go to
they're all very pale.
Wikipedia.org.
Yeah, check it out if you don't know about it.
I've never been to it. I'm going to check it out. 3 Colors Trilogy, fucking Polish, by Krzysztof Kolozowski. Anyway, this is
a good review of Green Room so far. You've Wikipedia'd a different film series, which is solid.
Well, I was just liking that he's gone blue, green. What's next? We don't know, but it's going to have a color in it, and then he too can be like that Polish guy and make movies about colors. But they're also about other things. They're like, that's really why he's doing it. He's not just a color guy.
And you heard it here. Not just a color guy, this Jeremy something who made Blue Ruin and Green Room. I think his next film, Fuchsia Cabin.
Yeah.
So look forward to that.
But I'm going to jump into Green Room from the same, boring. I'm just going to keep going from my perspective here. Acting is fucking awesome in this movie, and I don't have to complain about it. I think, first of all, what's his name? Jean-Luc Picard is in it. and I totally forgot he was
My
in
boy
it.
P Stew, Patrick Stewart.
Dude, he fucking was awesome. Oh, I'm just thinking back to his final scene with Patrick Stewart. But he's perfect. And once again, it's not, this movie definitely could have come through. It's not like for me a 10 Cloverfield Lane where had the main guy been gone it would have failed, or Indiana Jones and the fucking hand burning, face melting, whatever that one's called. Man, that movie fucking sucks. I'm sorry to segue
I
out of
will
it, but that movie
say,
fucking sucks.
no, hold on. Let's get into this because I have to be honest with you. I totally agree, and I don't want to be the person. I don't want to. I never wanted to be this person. I'll put it like that.
No, you
Indiana
don't.
Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark is basically a shit movie.
It sucks so much. It is, and that's what I was saying. Like, Harrison Ford is so good in it, but the movie itself is fucking terrible. Oh, I just watched it the other night, and it's just, it's a bad movie by a bad director about absolutely nothing. It is about nothing, and it tries to like have momentum based on silly sequences of Harrison Ford running around and getting spiders on him and chasing things and monkeys. But man, it's a fucking terrible shit.
The source material Spielberg was drawing on were like the cartoons and comics of his youth, which I don't think were trying to aim for anything much more than being delightful pulp to begin with. So I think that's, I think even people who love Indiana Jones are not arguing that it's like dipping into Dostoevsky or whatever. But it is not compelling. It is not interesting. There's no tension. It's kind of stupid. And it runs on the engine of charm alone, which does not hold up well once you become an adult. And it's on my list of films I wish I'd never rewatched because my childhood memory was so glorified and idealized. It really is not good. Temple of Doom is even worse. Really terrible. And
Awful.
then, frankly, The Last Crusade, pretty good movie.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty good. But anyway,
I'd watch that right now.
Yeah, me too. Oh, dude, you want? No, that's okay. Let's finish the episode. Then we're gonna do that. But it's just it's Patrick Stewart was like, I've known him. I've not known him. I've watched his movies and shows for a long time, and he always plays a pretty nice guy, and I like him in his movies. He is like. He did this so well. He played the bad guy, but he didn't play it to the extreme. He's just a fucking dude who wants to kill these people.
Well, I am a good friend of Pat's, and he did talk about how playing against type can be. When you do this kind of stunt casting, when you get like one of the most beloved character actors ever, and I grew up watching TNG, huge Star Trek fan. Jean-Luc Picard was a big part of like my early imaginative life. So in this film, he plays a Nazi. And even worse, he plays a charismatic, well-spoken, charming Nazi who has horrific intentions.
And even worse for you, he played a club owner who hosts punk bands, which you're a Jew. You're a punk.
True. I am.
How did that make you feel? Because that could have been you in that room.
If I was in a room being besieged by Nazis, I don't think I'd feel great about it, Charles. But I'm happy that you got that tough question out of me.
I mean, like, as a viewer of the movie, as a Jew. I already said this. As a Jew, as a punk, as a vegan.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't you,
I am
squirm?
vegan.
You watched Patrick Stewart, your favorite man. Turn out to be a man who would have killed you in this movie. It's just, wow.
Yeah. I think, let me say this, in real life, if my close personal friend Patrick Stewart killed me, I would be very upset. And I think I don't mind who hears that. Yeah,
just for me, I'm not a Jew. I'm not a punk.
Yeah, you're often mistaken for being a Jew.
That's true, actually. That doesn't happen. But
let me say this. We have to get this out of the way. I saw the film with my good friend Adam, who's also a member of the esteemed punk rock community. Very cool group of people. And oh man, am I proud of that world. This movie had a shocking amount of punk accuracy. some embarrassing stuff at the beginning. They flex a little hard trying to establish cred that comes off a bit tryhardy. But I think everyone who has gone on a long tour has played a shitty, gross, middle of nowhere club as depicted in this film. In this case, in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, and this was a shockingly punk accurate film, especially coming from a guy. The director was a member of the DC punk scene in the mid '90s. He did at times a bit overindulgent, but a very loyal depiction of a certain world of the punk lifestyle that deserves a lot of credit. I will say, in the scene where they're being interviewed by the young punk for his radio show, in his bedroom, he has both a GBH poster, the iconic British street punk band, and also a Dillinger Escape Plan poster, the math grind New Jersey based group of the 90s. So that would never happen. This kid has Liberty Spikes and like an army jacket and stuff. There's no way he likes GBH and DEP.
Oh, okay.
That is unrealistic.
Wow.
And the slow motion mosh pit scene is a little goofy. But all that aside, this might be the most punk accurate film I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Possibly ever.
I mean, I was going to say right out of the gate, I don't think I've ever seen a movie that was like a mainstream movie that this focused on punks. I don't think they're really, I couldn't really think of another one that cast, the main characters were all supposed to be punks. And as I've said, I've never been a punk, but I really like punks, and it was cool. It was really cool to watch punks do stuff that most movies don't let punks do.
Charles Hobby, a friend of the punks.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a punk. I took a class about punks. I did a large 20-page paper on punks. But I was born in the wrong era. That's not true. I was born in exactly the right era. Shit.
Charles once visited me in Brooklyn, and I took him on a long walk through a deserted warehouse district to a punk show where we saw a fight break out, and Charles was a little upset.
Yeah, I definitely was not ready to be a punk. I learned that many times. In fact, I went to that what was the Nighthawk show starring somebody that you put on, and I got kicked in the knee and I hurt and I left. So, and that wasn't even a punk show.
Oh yes, the Hawkwind show. Man, we're getting into some deep territory here. But Nick Turner of Hawkwind played a show that I booked, the most stressful show I've ever booked in my life. And they played some tunes that got the local punks a-going, and poor Charles got booted right in the knee.
And that wasn't even a punk show, and they all were moshing. It was a little scary.
Especially in Western Mass, where a lot of the punks, to paraphrase Jism, are indeed hippies. Hawkwind's sort of DIY free concert vibe in the 60s and 70s was a direct precursor to anarcho-punk in that Crass, the sort of defining anarcho-punk band, were greatly influenced by the hippie movement and their focus on communal values and shared property and resources. But we're getting very far off base here, Charles, and as much as I'd like to talk about punk well into the night, I like what you've pointed out about Green Room that makes it work, is that it feels like a 70s exploitation flick. That's what I liked about it. It's this deeply subcultural thing. It's punks versus skins. That's the takeaway selling point of this film. And it is awesome.
Yeah, and I think not having seen Blue Ruin, I'm just going to talk for 10 seconds, but what he did with Green Room, where he took the tropes of, as you're saying, like a 70s exploitation movie, Blue Ruin was like an action movie done through that same filter, where we know the tropes of the genre, yet he sort of includes most of it, but then goes somewhere else with it. And I think this director is really cool. He's shown himself twice now to make something very inventive, but also aware of the history of film. And I like what he's doing, and I want to see more. I want Fuchsia Cabin now.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to Fuchsia Cabin. And, go on Twitter and hashtag Fuchsia Cabin, and maybe we can get like one of those, Twitter things to happen where they get someone fired or something cool like that.
Yeah, but I think one of the great, like this movie, as we talked about movies where like the whole focus is being trapped in a room. as you pointed out in that very cheeky but accurate little synopsis of the movie, is there's a point at the movie where they can freely leave the space that they're trapped in, and then it becomes a whole other type of movie where it's no longer the claustrophobia of being locked in a place. It's about realizing that the place where you're trying to get to is just as bad as the place where you're in. And I think that's like a really great scene where they have most of the power at some point, and then they realize they don't. And it does so well with like this using the space and creating a really believable tension that comes out of being trapped there and then escaping and then having to go back and then finding this other room which leads nowhere pretty much. It's just like he really does a great job with the sort of architecture of the place he's using as his set piece. Well done, Jeremy.
Well, Jeremy, great work. And yeah, I think that um I'm not gonna my instinct is to call it misdirection, but I think that undercuts how clever a filmmaker old Jeremy is. Because yeah, we're given kind of all these possible directions the film can go in, and it kind of ends up lurching forward in the most brutal inch by inch way, despite being teased with these options. It's like Saw in that regard, in that you keep thinking, okay, maybe this is their way out or this is their way out, but there's really only one way out. And that's the one that they inexorably are drawn into. And as the film begins to pick up speed and very impressively a level of dispassion that rivals I don't know, it's a brutal film. When people start getting hacked up and killed and their bodies disposed of, it moves fast, and you will, I think, be impressed as well as horrified by how willing this director is to throw you right into the meat grinder. It's a bold, strange, and really emotionally effective movie, and you sort of feel every minute. And as you watch them, go forward and take about a foot of freedom and fall back and lose 2 feet of freedom, and it's a real agonizing back and forth, and it takes a lot of control to create a movie with that much atmosphere. And this has it for fucking days, man.
Oh yeah, it's you said you feel every minute. Usually that's a bad thing, but in this case it's good. You do feel every minute. It's like you're there, and it's one of it is like Saw. I don't even know why we watch Saw, but they're very similar, and the ways we watch them try to make decisions with, like in Saw where they're both chained to something, they have no way out, and yet they're still fighting to get out. And it's the same here. There's a little more leeway with what they have as options, but it's like where we watch people try to come up with a plan to survive even though they have very little to go off of. And I think it sort of reminded me in a way of It Follows, which I think was a movie about the futility of life and the eventuality of death. And this could be a very similar movie where we're watching people in a bad situation try to escape, but really what's the point?
Well, also, in a way, we're all trapped in Oregon, surrounded by neo-Nazis in a little shack in the middle of the woods.
So
You
this
know?
would not be an episode of The Real Deal unless we spoiled everything. So what do you take from the very last line of this movie? Do you think it's a very important part, or do you think it is just like he didn't really know how to end it, Josh?
Well, so the running, it's not really a joke, I suppose, but the band and their insistence on their punk authenticity melts away as they're pushed into a situation of total mortality. So, when they're being interviewed by this younger punk at the beginning of the film, they're very flippant and brash, and they're kind of just real dicks and very defensive and standoffish about being a punk band on tour. And as the film goes on, the question of like, what's your desert island band? Like, what's your favorite band of all time? It changes from, say, the Misfits to Madonna, or from Black Flag to, and you get the general idea. And at the very end of the movie, the kind of the least likely protagonist emerges from this scrum of punks, the soft-spoken, sensitive one who ends up teaming up with a lonely skin bird thrown out from her skin tribe to survive the travails of a skinhead siege, replete with dogs and fire extinguishers and shotguns and knives and all kinds of things. Um, he finally, at the end of the movie, realizes what his favorite band of all time is, and before he actually answers, it cuts right to the credits, and it's CCR.
Well,
Old Creedence Clearwater Revival is playing.
well, you also missed that she says. I think the last line of the movie is "Tell someone who gives a shit" or something. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
I believe so.
I just found it was I think it was playful in some ways, but I also wonder if, that question, it means different things each time it's asked of them. So like the first time it's in the context of the interview being getting them on, they really want to answer well. They want to come up with a good answer. And then later it's, when they're faced with all the, being in the situation they are, it turns into like this really goofy thing where they don't really care anymore. They just come up with something silly that obviously wouldn't represent them. And then they make it through, and he finally comes up with his favorite band, his Desert Island Band, and the fact that she doesn't care, it's just like, it sort of brings it back to the whole nihilistic look at this, is where like, yes, you made it out, yes, you felt all this shit, you survived, but still in the end, it fucking doesn't matter. And I don't know, that's what I took away from it. It was just sort of like a brutal reminder that really doesn't matter. Back to where we started, reality is lost. Doesn't matter.
Well, it's also a reminder that the only people who would give a shit are dead now, and he is alone.
Well, but that's the whole
how the film ends.
And that's the point, is that in most movies there would be a connection grown from the experiences that these two people shared. This insane, violent night where they have to get to the end. Most movies would have ended it, they fall in love together, whatever. Here it's like, no, that doesn't happen. We're now traumatized and still gonna die, and I really don't give a shit about your Desert Island Band. Just like it's a really
it's a film about the inspiring illusions of what it means to be a punk and to have this identity, and then it's all stripped away, and we're left with nothing.
Yeah.
And Charles, just as dispassionately as old Jeremy of Fuchsia Cabin finished Green Room, let's get to our final points on this very delightful sort of underdog film.
Yeah, I think I think we were talking about there at the end is it has the punk versus Nazis, but I think really it doesn't matter. I think it did a great job of showing that all these identities that are there, whether you're a Nazi, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not, no judging. Actually, maybe I should judge you. But anyway, whether you're a Nazi or a punk, the movie is showing that your sides really it doesn't fucking matter. You could have been anything in that room. And it just, it's good. It's violent, but in really good ways. It's light in a lot of ways. It's fucking great. I really love this movie.
Well, for me, the defining visual of the film is the fact that this young punk, to survive his night besieged by skinheads, becomes a skinhead, at least in appearance, to work his way out. And that's a very powerful metaphor, because if the popularly conceived notion of punk is one of extreme individualism, to see someone be forced into giving all of that up and actually assuming the uniform of, well, uniformity. Like if a skinhead is all about uniformity and a punk is all about individualism, he has to give up that individuality and at least wear the outfit of conformity to survive this life and death situation. And at the end, when, again, theoretically, we would have found this character has grown and discovered some deeper truth about something, it turns out that in many ways, it's still this infantile gesture to cling on to this meaningless question, and his answer means nothing. And it's not a playful ending. It's a definitive one about the bare bones of reality and what we give up to arrive at that conclusion.
Yeah.
And on that note, thanks for listening to The Real Deal Josh and Charles. I'm Josh.
I'm Charles.
And next week, we're going to talk more about stuff. So I guess, fucking A, huh?
2 weeks. Because
whatever. Don't fucking contradict me.